We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
With Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Woo! It is Reality Rants. I am Jason Bermas. A lot going on today. We're going to be talking about the Federal Reserve, especially because this banking thing's not going anywhere. It's just pushing us further and further down the line into a track, trace, database, digital currency system, one way or another, where the vast majority of us, the slaves, the proletariat, the plebs, the serfs, are on a digital dole-out UBI system. Think about how many people right now in this country already have a magic EBT card. Now, back in the Dizzy, and believe me, this was not perfect. These were the steps they had to take you along to get you to accept these types of social control. But when you were on, if you're as old as me, if you got some grays in your beard, you may remember it. If you were in the welfare system, you had a thing called food stamps. And it was a very visual thing that you had to use these. It was almost like a coupon book full of different types of money. Now, there would be people that would sell their food stamps for actual money because there was only certain things you could get with the food stamps. It was first of all, there is no perfect welfare system. Really, back in the day, one of the things that was appealing about Clinton, in fact, if you can remember that long, I remember it, was the talk of not welfare, but workfare, right? And Michael Moore also tried to push that idea, but then when it came into practice, it was like, well, they're making almost the same amount of money doing nothing, right? And that's the mindset, unfortunately. They want to keep you in to get you in on the I'm on the dole welfare slave system, because if you're on the dole, then you got to jump through hoops, or you don't get that scratch. You don't get that cheese. Okay? And that's a big thing. There's a lot of people out there that are going to take the path of least resistance, unfortunately. A lot of people that are beaten down. A lot of people saying, why not? You already have people that want to take advantage of these systems, right? So, kind of the theme of the show today is the post-truth world, the unreality, inversion of truth that we all live in. And as I said, we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve, but I've also got some Operation Paperclip for you. I've got some Fort Detrick and bio-warfare, as well as kind of the propaganda angle of that for you. The sustainable, clean energy lie for you. And even a little transgenics and human experimentation for everybody via unzipped genes. Because when you look at this thing, you have to ask yourself, do you really believe that science has not progressed? Did you not heed the warnings of Dwight Eisenhower, a guy at the time who in the circles he was in, had seen more than the vast majority of us could ever imagine to see behind the scenes, period. That was the generational World War II guy, a guy that was going to Bohemian Grove, okay? And I think, in essence, if you look at what was developed around that time, the idea that we needed to keep things from the president, the idea of born classified, all right? And that idea is a dangerous one because it's taken us down this road where in this country we don't have a constitutional republic. Democracy is just a word when you can't audit things, when it's not one person, one vote, when you again have a digital slave system. Think about that parallel of they want you on a digital voting system and they want you on a digital currency system. Why? Because digital manipulation is much easier. And it's harder for most to understand because even though they use the old boxy to scrolly, they have no idea how that thing works. The vast majority don't know how to program for it, especially. There's not a lot of tinkerers out there in the general populace, right? There's the jailbreakers. Like, that's about as far as I would go, some command prompts in a jailbreak situation. I'm not sitting there and trying to look for the exploits in and out. So that's a really good example, okay? So I'm not making any accusations about any companies because we've been talking about the voting system and how we need to really have what? Election reform, period. If we keep the same systems in place, we're going to keep getting the same results no matter what the people want, period. That's what I'm telling. It doesn't matter who's running it. Doesn't matter if it's Diebold back in the day or someone that starts with a D now. Doesn't matter. So every time an iDevice comes out or a very, very popular Android device, there's two things that happen. There's an jailbreak for the iDevice, and then there's a way to root. Some allow you to root right out of the gates, but a lot of them now you got to go through a whole bunch of stuff and root the device. Now, what does this initially get you access to? This gets you access to the back end and homebrew software, etc. iCloud, which is a service that locks your phone, okay, I believe it's now been around for over a decade. I don't think anyone's cracked iCloud. Nobody. And that would be a lucrative business. I believe there is with certain equipment, certain ways that you can absolutely, get rid of the iCloud lock. But as far as I know, there's no software out there for guys like me to download that after all these years. And just to find that exploit, there are teams of people in the underground to get in on a jailbreak. And they have to have access to the device, obviously. Now ask yourself, does the general public have access to devices that are used for voting? That's a big no sauce. That's a big no. Is there a random audit of these things, even to the tune of 3%? Which Jimmy Carter himself, when he and Baker had their little commission and wrote their paper up on it, said, no, 3%. First of all, 1 in 10 bare minimum, 10%. I'd like to see 1 in 3, 33. 1 in 3 of these things is going to be audited. In every building, by the way. That's how I do it. 1/3 at least. And boy, oh boy, if you catch enough anomalies, right? Because this whole thing that's going to a circus show with Trump, he gave his message yesterday. We'll talk about that. It looks like he could be arrested as early as tomorrow. A lot of people were saying Tuesday. Seems the lawyers are working out. We'll show you that the Pelosi husband have made it over to New York City so they can grandstand as soon as they put Trump in jail. Like, this is... It's a weird time in history, folks. It's the inversion of reality. And look, Trump's not perfect. I keep saying it, but look what they got him on. It's out of control. Out of control. We're gonna get to Bynes, who's the person in the upside down, a bit down the line, but it is reality rants, and we're gonna get to the clips too. But we got almost 2 hours to fill. And yesterday, I went on the T-Lab, the Last American Vagabond fund drive. He did it from noon to 5 Eastern, I believe. All-star cast over there. Even when I was there, I was very lucky to sit down with Johnny Vedmore and Taylor Hudak and Steve from Slow News Day, etc. And by the way, we're going to bring in Andrew from Action for Assange for about 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more in about 20 minutes on this program too. So you might want to be on the premium end for some of these clips because they're big time clips. Anyway, I went on this show, and I believe Dana Rancourt was one of the people on there. And there's a lot to be said about Rancourt and his work. And, he's done some good stuff. I think he's an intelligent guy. And he was happy. And this is where I would both agree with him. And by the way, Ricky Verandas of the Union of the Unwanted and the Ripple Effect podcast, he was there. Whitney Webb was there before. It's a great show. And they were doing raffles. They were doing all sorts of fun stuff. Rebunked. Courtney Turner. She texted me. I need to text her back. And see if I can go do this event. I'm not really sure what my schedule is. However, Rancourt was talking about China. Okay. And he was, first of all, he said he was happy that there weren't a lot of people that were kind of China-phobes and blaming everything on China, and trying to push us into World War III. We got enough of that right now. I got a story today where we got a couple of B-52s with the old nuclear weapons on them being intercepted by a Russian jet. We're poking some bears. When I say we, it ain't me, it ain't you. It's the military-industrial complex, nation-state apparatus. Certainly not. Joe Biden's not making these decisions. He's got no idea what's going on. And is it Christmas yet? I'll tell you, buddy. Corn popping Christmas. So, where I'd say I agree with Rancourt, as you guys all know, is I constantly talk about how we're not at war with the Chinese people. We shouldn't even consider that, seeing there are 1.2 trillion of them. But the conversation kind of arose where I actually had said something about the Fourth Industrial Revolution and this whole idea of the COVID-19 84 nightmare just engulfing society and how there was really nowhere to run. And it just shows you there is no escape plan from this. We're going to have to fight this. There is nowhere to go. And I made that point, and he had come back and kind of said, well, I would disagree with that. I would say that, he specifically said creative people might want to consider Russia or China. Now, first of all, I've never been to China. I've never been to Russia. I do, for instance, Fiorella, one part of the Convo Couch with Craig Pastajardula, also on the stream, with T-Lab. They're over there right now. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what it's like to live in Russia. We are just so, I guess you could say a mix of ethnocentric and jingoistic in our culture. And we're raised that way. And so many people just have blinders on via what they see on the television and movies and then the news as the ultimate reality. That's not reality. So in China in particular, there is this idea of a day-to-day authoritarian police state. And I would agree, in fact, with Rancourt, that's really not, again, 1.2 trillion people. And from what I understand from talking to people that have actually spent time there, I'll go all the way back to pre-2010. So now we're talking about 13 years ago. He said, look, where I was, crime was really rampant. And that you were more likely to come to crime because the police really didn't want to do anything. Yeah, I mean, you ultimately had to prove on the spot that somebody else took something from you. And if you didn't have the evidence, they just keep it. Like, you know how you always hear, like, possession is 9/10 of the law here and all that other stuff. He said, you know, on top of that, the regulatory thing on businesses, this is something that Rancourt talked about. It's very easy to start a business there, and there's little to no regulation to get you going. He's right about that. Okay? But I discussed how the model, first of all, he didn't really have an answer for me when I said, look, do you really think that Russia and China in particular, like you said, these people adopt technologies? I know there won't be a pushback on a CBDC type system or a digital currency blockchain system based in carbon credits and a social credit score. But do you even think they're going to push back on transhumanism? You know, I think that's a very good question to ask. And, you know, they're not. I see them being some of the biggest proponents of the transhumanist nightmare, right? Like that's what I see. I see them easily getting their population to go along with it. That's spooky and scary, and you know, it's not a place to go. And he backed off a little bit, but then there was another instance where, you know, he was talking about geopolitics ruling. And I don't necessarily disagree with that statement, but I think that you can, you know, he said billionaires don't matter, billionaires can be replaced. And I agree, in theory. The idea that there are certain, billionaires which absolutely could be burned, right? Not a problem. And what do I mean by that? Well, like, you don't really need Jeff Bezos. Okay, Jeff Bezos is upper management. But Amazon's going to be around. The infrastructure that Bezos has built, you know, not a big deal. Like, when we can get somebody else to front and run that. Even Bill Gates, who's very much one of these social climbers, one of these guys that has promoted for them their agenda of sustainability and equity and biomedical fascism. You know, and eugenics, not only within the human species, which you better believe it, but eugenics via genetically modified organisms in nature, in our food, and beyond. Again, alarming. But they'd burn that guy. He's totally and completely burnable. Let me see. We're going to just find Andrew over here, and hopefully he's going to be joining us in the next 18 minutes. There he is right there, Andrew Smith from Action for Assange. He's going to be joining us about East Palestine and Ohio and what's going on there. He lives in Ohio outside of Cleveland, and I can't wait to have this discussion with him, because that, again, just shows you how much disdain they have for the public, how we truly do live in the upside down. And I guess before, you know, we get to him, this is a good time to cut into Amanda Bynes. Inside Amanda Bynes' sad spiral from teen rom-com queen to psychiatric hold. Okay, now they found her apparently roaming the streets naked and alone. You've seen the substance abuse, the conservatorship, and the mental illness. Now, why am I bringing this? Why is that a big thing for me? Because constantly I talk about how this Hollywood system abuses children. And think about it when you're a kid. When you're a kid, especially, You fantasize of being a childhood actor or a movie star, right? Because it is aggrandized to such a level where on the outside of that, you see the fortune, the cars, the women or the guys that are around afterwards, the smiles and the makeup and the award shows and you see all this good stuff. Wow. You see them on beaches, you see them at parties. Just, it looks like the lifestyle. Okay? So many of these people are broken. It's another one of those careers where you've chosen a certain embedding of lies. Just a teeny smidge more of lies all the time. It's not maybe it's not lawyer lies, right? You're playing, pretending, but you are pretending. Yeah, that's why it's acting. You're playing. And to get your kid involved in this industry is, to me, so wild and so insane. And when I hear this stuff from my nieces, right? Because it's inevitable. You're going to hear kids talk about it, just like you're going to hear them talk about when they're a kid, how they want to be a princess. And you know how I feel about those royal bloodlines. That whole, nepotistic rule by bloodlines. I'm not a big fan of it, everybody. I think it's bad news. But you're going to have those conversations. And I say to them, look, a lot of those people, especially that get involved in childhood, are very unhappy. It's not what you think it is. And I often talk about this. I can't imagine not being able to just go to the store and be left alone for the most part. Every once in a while, somebody comes up to me and says hello, and it's usually a very positive experience. But all the time, to the point where you've got to wear a disguise, that's obnoxious. I mean, how much validation do you really need? And I struggle with it because I love entertainment. I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy, for instance, right? I'm a big fan of going to concerts. And, that's really two of the things that can rival just movie stars or acting. And being that type of public figure, I think we all do to a certain extent, but not for me. And I also approach it, and I understand that these people are people too. At the same time, a lot of them get burnt out on this abuse. And Bynes, all I'm going to say about Bynes is that Bynes made some pretty big accusations involving her being abused as a child that have been largely ignored. And that if you look at the entertainment industry for children, and especially Nickelodeon and Schneider's Bakery in particular, you're going to find dark stuff. And when you find this dark stuff, you ask yourself, why hasn't anybody been arrested? Why is this allowed to go on? Why are we in what seems to be the dark clown show, the circus? Because that's what it feels like to me, everybody. A true dark clown show. So I want to go over this story here because this shows you that, and this Fort Detrick reel that I want to play from back in the day, it should let you know that propaganda has been used against the people for some time. It's gotten a bit more sophisticated. I believe that now it's the global population that is truly under attack. It doesn't matter who you are. And that's changed the game somewhat. Okay, but in large part, that's about it. That's really the only game changing. Okay? It's a small part of it. So, woman who was sexually assaulted at age 13 at the hands of her rowing coach, 40, now names the attacker as Olympic legend Ted Nash, whose abuse was retold in Emmy-nominated film The Tale. I haven't seen The Tale. Again, this is kind of how I think it's important to have entertainment, to tell stories like this one, because it conveys so much more, unfortunately, than a documentary can in most cases. So basically, you know, this woman's tale is a pretty familiar one when you find out about these monsters. These people put them in positions of authority and mentorship and then groom the children. Okay, these young girls. She wasn't the only one. That's, another factor in a lot of this. They're obviously doing it on purpose to see how many of these children they can abuse. Okay, period. That's school teachers when they get caught. Okay, it's not just one. So directors when they get caught, it's not just one. Mr. Weinstein, everybody's been above age, but not everybody who's accused him. He's only lost in court there. And let me say this. Just because you haven't been convicted of a crime in court doesn't mean you're not guilty. I think that's pretty... Hey, how many crimes did Jimmy Savile get convicted of in court? How about Ted Heath? Whole bunch of them? How many times did Dennis Hassert get convicted in court of molesting children? That's a big zero. It's a goose egg. Did it happen? I don't know. A judge labeled him in a courtroom a serial child molester. You got to love how, again, the Department of Justice is so concerned with nobody's above the law, of going after Donnie T for paying off a high-profile porn star and hooker after having sex with her, them agreeing not to talk about it, them not talking about it, it being in the public arena now, I think for the better part of 8 years. And now they're going to try to parade him out in cuffs with something that wouldn't even be a misdemeanor, which they're trying to construe as some kind of campaign contribution. What? And you think that I'm selling you on this on some kind of contrived level. We don't really know what the charges are going to be yet because the indictment hasn't dropped. All right? And we can only speculate as to the amount of imagination land that's going to be put forth on this. But it's plenty. It's a lot. So much imagination land as we live in the upside down that why don't we just have imagination land actors come in and talk about mental health? Okay? Now, I don't know what is Ted Lasso about someone who's mentally ill? I guess Ted Lasso is Jason Sudeikis. Guys, I'm not hip or with it. I don't watch any kind. Is this a Hulu original? What's going on? No clue what's going on. Okay, it's one of those things. Just like, what in the world? So you had the African reporter who's amazing, being like, what is this? And trying to get some real questions in, and they pounce on him. But why in the world are we having a bunch of actors up there? Olivia Wilde, people have been pointing this out, and I'm not trying to shit on anybody and their relationships. But when we talk about mental illness, okay, why are we listening to actors, many of whom are on therapist 3, 4, 5, are on medication 6, 7, 8? As I was stating before, a lot of these people are, guess what? Broken people. They're broken people. I mean, that's it. It's who they are. I wish they weren't. I really do. They're chameleons as well. they're so close to what you're getting with the Pelosi and the gang. Because, I mean, look at Pelosi. I mean, a lot of people say that politics is Hollywood for ugly people. But look at that thing. Look at those boots. Everybody wants to pick on DeSantis's boots. Come on. This is how hip or with it I am. What are those? And I didn't know. That's like something people were talking about 10 years ago, pointing at your shoes and those. I mean, and I wasn't hip to that then. That's what we're going after him for. There's Mr. Pelosi, the Peloser, Nancy and Mr. Pelosi. What's it, Paul? Paul Pelosi? Yeah, Paul. Nancy and Paul. So that shows you it's real. You know, she can't wait to get up there with Chucky Schumer and the gang. It's without a doubt. This is what they want. What has happened? What has happened to this crazy, mixed up world that we live in? Because it's crazy. And oh yeah, that's right. We're in the post-truth world. You better believe it. We're in the post-truth world. They're gonna get him. And here he is. Trump launches blistering attack on the Stormy Horseface Daniels extortion plot and condemns horrible radical left Democrat probes ahead of arrest on Wednesday at the earliest. The city ramps up for security for protests. I mean, do they want to start a riot in New York City? Do they want to, like, it's pretty wild. So, I mean, I guess we could find the video somewhere. It's got to be like on Truth Social, right? Here it is right here. Let's listen to a little Donnie T while we wait for Andrew. Let's see. I sent on Twitter. Oh, see, there we go. So hopefully we're going to have him in a moment. Let's see what Donnie T had to say right here. Let's block Truth Social.
These 4 horrible radical left Democrat investigations of your all-time favorite president, me, is just a continuation of the most disgusting witch hunt in the history of our country. It's gone on forever with Russia, and Ukraine, and the Mueller hoax. It's an absolute disgrace what's going on. They even spied on my campaign. And remember this, with all of the work that they did on Mueller, no collusion. That's what the answer was all no collusion. Whether it's the Mar-a-Lago raid or the Unselect Committee hoax, the perfect Georgia phone call, it was absolutely perfect, or the Stormy Horseface Daniels extortion plot. They're all sick, and it's fake news. Our enemies are desperate to stop us because they know that we are the only ones who can stop them, and they know it very strongly. And they're looking at the polls where, not me, but we are up by so much. They can't even believe it. We won twice, and now we've got to win a third time. They know that we can defeat them. They know that we will defeat them. But they're not coming after me. They're coming after you. I'm just standing in their way, and I always will.
It's a lot of orange. There we go. Here's our boy. Let's bring that right down to there and admit. He is an activist. He is with Action for Assange, but he also happens to be in Cleveland, Ohio. And obviously, East Palestine, in the vicinity there, first of all, Andrew, for my audience that's not aware of you, tell them a little bit about your activism, and then basically you're at work. You've been trying to shine some light on this situation that got a little bit of media press in the beginning, but now that's dying off, and a lot of what's actually happening has now been forgotten or continues to be obfuscated. So let my audience know who you are, what you're up to, and why this matters.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, first of all. I miss you, buddy. Well, my name's Andrew Smith. Back in 2019, when Julian Assange was arrested from the Ecuadorian embassy and taken to Belmarsh prison, my friends and I decided to start organizing because what else can you do from America to fight back from this? We managed to get 82 or 83 countries involved with 170 some protests around the world at the peak. And we're still going. We have another event that we're planning in April 11th. I'm less involved now just because of like medical stuff with my children and things like that. But yeah, it's been a crazy year. 2 years ago, I think I actually made it on Tucker Carlson back in 2021. I don't know why they let me go on there, but it was a lot of fun.
So, look, we've been covering the Assange case. Some of the mainstream journalists here are starting to pick up on it. Obviously, we have the Twitter files, yet there's not a WikiLeaks type dump. These are the things that we've been calling for. And, to kind of go into East Palestine, I feel like that's what we need right now is a WikiLeaks style dump of all the communications of all those that made this decision to blow up this train after a derailment that had been stabilized and essentially poison what I believe will amount to not just thousands of people, not just tens of thousands of people, but hundreds of thousands of people and possibly millions. Would you say that's a correct assessment?
Absolutely. I think so. If you look at where it exploded, right, you have Ohio, this little weird heart-shaped state, Youngstown's here, and then you have East Palestine immediately below it, about 15 minutes south. Well, what they don't show you is that 30 minutes to the southeast of East Palestine is Pittsburgh, literal Pittsburgh. And they were waiting till the wind was blowing southeast to blow up the train. That's literally what Mike DeWine explained when he gave a press conference about it. So I think that is in and of itself a tragedy that they allowed that to happen. And then here in my community, just outside of Cleveland, it's probably about a 20-minute drive from my house to Cleveland to get here. They've shipped 500 tons of waste from East Palestine to Grafton, Ohio, which is just south of the city south of me. And they've started burning it, which in and of itself is a problem. Some of the locals are like, oh no, the company that's doing it, they're a good, trustworthy family company. They've been here however long, but I want to stop the burn. But the method that I see to do that is to get the public engaged in the other part of what Ross is trying to do, which is they're trying to build what they're referring to as a monofill. It's essentially a toxic chemical heavy metal landfill. It's going to be 200 acres. On the literal edge of farm country in the northern part of the state. And it is about a mile from the Black River and about a quarter mile from the community's entire school campus, elementary school, junior high, high school. And so I found out about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago from my friend who lives in the area that was like, hey, I really need help with this. I don't know what we're going to do. The township that it's being built in, they meet in a building that was donated by the same corporation that's trying to build the landfill. And one of the members of the board of directors for Ross sits on the rezoning commission in Eaton Township and gets to vote if his company is getting this landfill or not. So I've been distributing flyers, going crazy doing that for the last while to try to pull people there as a way to start by resisting the landfill and then turning it into fighting the incineration of this waste itself.
Scary stuff. I mean, when you say a quarter mile away from the school, let me try to explain what that means to people that may be a little bit slow. That's the track that they make you around 4 times, straightened out once. From the school.
You can literally take a left off of the road that the incinerator's on, go through one small town traffic light, and immediately take a right and you're at the schools.
I don't have much of an arm left, but I could toss a baseball back in my day, and it would not be hard for me to throw a baseball from the school into the dump site. You
can literally sit in the parking lot and watch the steam stack just blowing the chemicals out of the top. But So can I share? I'm going to try to find one of the images because I think it's fun in a really messed up kind of way because the best we can do right now is laugh. But
I think it's dark
I
because we're
got,
talking about our sheriff's department here, and our sheriff's department is the one that's really supposed to be accountable to the people. You know, these are the elected officials that you want on your side that should be standing arm in arm with you, not only protesting that this will happen, but saying not in our town. Standing up for the people's rights to be, I don't know, healthy, for their children not to be literally poisoned, Andrew. So set this up before you. All right, now you've got it coming up. Set this up right now. Tell my audience about this.
So I made some clever little posters, right? Just very simple little posters. Your attendance is wanted April 11th. Let me full screen it on my side. Your attendance is wanted March 22nd to turn out to the city council meeting. I put the faces of the board members on the flyers, which is publicly available from their website. It's their images they provide, their names, no identifying information outside of their names and positions, which one Google search reveals, right? And it says, Ross Environmental Services Vice President is wanted for the degradation of property values and public health in Lorain County. He serves as a member of a small board of bandits burning 500 plus tons of toxic waste from the East Palestine crash just outside of Grafton. Once in the soil, air, and water, these forever chemicals are known to cause horrible birth defects and long-term health issues in humans. The same corporation is now trying to rezone 200 plus acres in Eaton Township to heavy industrial in order to build a forever chemical landfill. Speak up, March 22nd, 7 p.m. Right? So I get yesterday a knock on my door after passing out a couple thousand of these flyers from my local sheriff's department that the CEOs, I don't know how well you can see that.
Yeah, we can see it.
Company are shook and have filed a restraining order against me. So if I go to the meeting on Wednesday, which I'm going to, then there's a very likely chance, even though this hasn't been fully served to me, that I'm going to be detained when I go.
So let's talk about this. Let's start right now. These people are public figures, correct?
Correct.
They are.
All of the imagery has been provided by them on their website.
Okay. So we have public figures. We have publicly provided photographs. Okay. We have a catchy poster of you trying to get people in attendance to challenge these people. You have literally called for no violence against them. You do not have a violent history of any type of assaults, etc. And yet you were just served with a restraining order, basically trying to cripple your First Amendment because your activism is effective, Andrew.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I did tell the townspeople to arm themselves and that it was a damn shame there were so many young men without rifles. Right. So I will give them that, but only one of the people on this order were there when I said that. And this order does not include all 9 of the board of directors from Ross. And all I did was say, hey, I'm using my First Amendment to tell you to use your second. It's an open carry state. Mm-hmm. Right. Like people went to the RNC with rifles on their back in 2016. Like it's an open carry state here in Ohio. So I could see that mildly, but only one of those people of the 5 listed here were actually in attendance when I said those things. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how far that would apply, but I feel like they might be able to misconstrue that or construe it in a way that is applicable to this. So I don't want to say that I'm completely blameless because there is an article in the newspaper about me getting pulled out shouting about class warfare from the last meeting.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not the best lamb in this whole situation, but I don't ever plan on hurting anyone or provoking violence. It is to provoke thought from the community because it's everyone here that's being poisoned, and the sheriffs would rather come after me for informing people than to stop the people that are burning fucking forever chemicals.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the craziest thing, because look, this
Can
is
I
yeah, go
bridge
ahead.
this to something though? Because there's a larger thing at play here that I see. Right. So the EPA has an organization within it that tests the soil and ground. Right. That's a very normal thing that people think the EPA does. But that organization possesses the legal authority to seize houses, properties, and prevent farmers from farming because of dioxins, because of essentially plastic and chemical residue in the ground at 1 part per billion. And they can cease farming activity at zero 0.5 parts per billion. So what I'm worried about, like, yes, I'm worried about the immediate threat to the water and the air with them burning these chemicals, the long-term threat to the Black River and Lake Erie with them burying the chemicals, but also the threat to the public's property, right? Because the EPA can come in a year and a half, 2 years from now when another crazy thing happens somewhere and say, oh, we found dioxin in your soil. You can't grow food here anymore, sir. We found dioxin in your soil. Your house can no longer be here, sir, and can literally by force of the federal government remove people. And you have Bill Gates, one of the biggest vaccine donors, buying up all of the farmland. So the EPA is essentially setting the stage to be able to come in and evict all of these small local residential farmers to try to centralize that here in the United States. At least that's what I think. That's why, more than anything, that's why I'm so passionate about this, is because the EPA, I believe, in the future is going to try to seize property with the excess rights that they have, because we've already heard CNN talk about the fact that they're going to hype the climate fears next, and like all of these other pieces that they're trying to put into place to be able to take from us, the public, what is rightfully ours, which is the property that we own.
So let's talk about that. You think this is actually, in essence, a long play at backdoor eminent domain to
Yes.
stop a lot of, I would say, the East Coast production, because although you're in the Midwest, Ohio largely serves the New York area. You know, Pennsylvania and Ohio are big for agriculture in that area, and the Northeast. That would be a huge play. And basically you're saying that at some point, could be 5 years down the line, could be 10 years down the line, who knows? But they'll step in and say, not only is the soil unfit for food, but your home is no longer fit to be lived in. This is what we're offering you. It's a take it or leave it scenario, or take it really, because when it comes to
take it or
domain,
be taken.
Yeah, you can't really challenge it. And essentially, you think that these communities will end up being bulldozed and part of a sustainability project. And
this same company that's burning the chemicals right now, that's building the landfill, will be contracted to burn every one of these people's houses, right? When the EPA steps in. So that's my larger concern. And it takes steps to get there. It takes steps to organize the community to actually be able, and the public to be able to recognize and defend it. But I'll share some videos with you privately about the organization and things like that within the EPA, because it has its own acronym. I'm terrible with names. I can't remember what it's called, but it's pretty horrifying that they're able to do this.
I want to talk to you about this landfill really quickly, because the thing is, number one, a regular landfill is going to get into the soil, into the waterways, into the ecosystem. And that's why most landfills are somewhat isolated from communities. You know, I mean, usually you've got a good mile barrier, even of the poorest of poor neighborhoods, when you have that. And in order to qualify for a landfill, certain things are supposed to be put into place. But with the gravity of the situation and how quickly it's moved, I don't see those regulations going into place. We've talked about the school, but the community's right there. And this isn't just a regular landfill. Let's reiterate that. As bad as a regular landfill would be, this is probably to the magnitude, and this isn't hyperbolic, hundreds to thousands of times worse, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be over the course of 200 acres, 200, I think it's like 243 acres total. And they're saying that they're going to use clay and 2 plastic tarps. That's their way to stop it from bleeding out into the water is
Oh,
you
the
put down a
plastic
layer of
tarps.
clay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
listen, I work
two-
with plastic tarps. They're
two
kind of like
plastic tarps,
Superman's
Jason.
cape.
It's like double masking it. You got to put 2 and we're good.
This is insane.
It's painful. It's horrifying out here.
Andrew, I know you're at work, so I know you got limited time. Wrap it up. Let people know how they can support you. Maybe they need to call the sheriff's office. Maybe they need to show up if they're in your area and oppose this. Maybe they need to get their communities involved so they can come to your aid. Tell us about it.
So, if you're in the Ohio area and you can make it on March 22nd at 7 p.m., and it's on Avon Belden Road in Grafton. If you Google Eaton Township Hall, it'll come up. But I don't need any monetary support, anything like that. The thing that I hope or need in a way for people to do is just be involved in your community, figure out what's going on, because this isn't just Ohio. Ross has actually received less waste than most other facilities have, right? You have facilities in Michigan that have received over 2,000 tons of waste. Minnesota's receiving waste. Our friend Emma had reached out to me and mentioned that they're burning waste up by her. They're sending the polluted water down to Texas and injecting it into old fracking pits, and that's going to turn out real well for the groundwater out there. So do what you can in your city. Figure out if anything like this is happening or whatever the issue is you care about. Just do whatever you can with the time and money that you have.
Andrew, keep your head up. Keep doing what you're doing. And I got to have you on in the near future to talk about the developments with Julian Assange, the case here in the United States that just keeps pushing forward and forward and forward. The inexcusable way the vast majority of the media has treated this and a host of other free speech issues. A pleasure as always, my friend.
I appreciate you, buddy. Have a good day.
Yes, you too. So there he is, Andrew Smith of Action for Assange, killing it as always, doing his thing, and really set an example, in my opinion, for people even like myself to get out there and act like you can make a difference, because you can make a difference. All right. But I guess we're only going to have time for one video here on the free portion of the broadcast, although you can listen to the whole thing for free every day live over at the infowarrior.podbean.com. And then the MP3 is always up there. However, $10 a month, $10 a month, $10 a month, or start with a week for $1. That's how you support the broadcast. We got a ton of videos to go over, so this will be a fun one to watch. You can listen to it, but don't you want to see the face of G. Edward Griffin when we play him? You'll get a little sampler. Don't you want to see the propaganda of Fort Detrick for yourself? You'll be able to hear it. Don't get me wrong. But then every 2 weeks, we release the premium portion of the broadcast for free anyway. But redvoicemedia.com/uncensored, redvoicemedia.com/Jason. That's how you sign up. That's how you support the broadcast. All right, let's talk about this quick, because this is a real big deal to me. Again, I'm trying not to be poking any bears, but we're poking them. Su-35 fighter jet intercepts 2 U-B-52s. Oh, the nuclear bombers. Can we stop already? Can we stop acting like any of this is normal or good? It's not. Did Ukraine blow up the Nord Stream? Come on. Oh, wait. Gee, we know what happened. My goodness. So, before I'm going to set this one up, this is Glenn Beck. All right, back in the day when he was before the Blaze, post CNN, Fox News. And really, if Fox News had gone in the direction of what Beck ended up doing, because I was a huge critic, and sometimes still am, of Glenn Beck, right? A lot of people call it Big Con, whatever. Glenn Beck's given somebody like Alex Stein a voice. I like what Alex does. Oh, well, he's just shock humor. he brings attention to the issue, right? So say what you want about those people. I think that Glenn, especially when you look at DARPA and the nightmare we've been through the past several years, they're one of the best outlets out there, period. So his first taste of this seemed to come from G. Edward Griffin and the creature from Jekyll Island. And because right now we're talking about bank implosions and a controlled implosion and a system of consolidation and CBDCs, we kind of have to understand how we got here through privatized fascism. So here is Beck kind of describing that model.
The Federal Reserve Act wasn't drafted in Congress. It was drafted on a private island off the coast of Georgia in 1910. Here is the island, Jekyll Island. And it was drafted under great secrecy. Jekyll Island was the retreat for billionaires like William Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan. And in 1910, Senator Nelson Aldrich, the Republican whip in the Senate and the chair of the National Monetary Commission, sent his private railroad car to the New Jersey Railroad Station, where he and 5 other men were instructed to come one at a time and everybody pretend they just didn't know each other. Aldrich, who is the guy, remember, he wrote the original bill. He was a business associate of J.P. Morgan. Oh, and the father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller, Jr. So there's no special interest happening there. There was also Abram Piatt Andrew, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, and Frank Vanderlip, representing William Rockefeller, Henry Davidson and Benjamin Strong with J.P. Morgan, and Paul Warburg. He was a partner at Kuhn, Loeb and Company.
So let me pause it. You notice the name Rockefeller comes up a couple times. We've been talking about David Rockefeller in particular, little John D. over the week. That's why we're playing this clip. Number one, this information now has been semi-mainline, as you can see with Beck, for over a decade, 15 years plus, okay? And G. Edward Griffin is a large part of that. He's a treasure. I've got these G. Edward Griffin clips coming up, probably on the flip side of the paid portion of the broadcast, talking about how this is a cartel, because it is a cartel. And the reason I'm playing this and Beck kind of coming along, again, Beck far from perfect. And boy, he needs to apologize about 9/11 truth, big time, and the war on terror, big time. And just like Tucker did. And he needs to start exploring that. And people need to start owning to the fact that that's when there was an acceleration of the continuity of government, shadow government, corruption, the quote-unquote deep state and its control, the expansionism of things like signature reduction, homeland security. That's the reality. Some people point to the Smith-Mundt Act. People like Cass Sunstein. The psychological information war gone wild. And look, the Federal Reserve System empowers that constantly.
The Federal Reserve Act wasn't drafted in Congress. It was drafted on a private island off the coast. He was a partner at Kuhn, Loeb and Company. He was representing the Rothschild banking family. Oh, he's going to talk about the Rothschilds now. He actually is an interesting character. If you ever saw Little Orphan Annie, Daddy Warbucks was named after Warburg. These are the men that represented 1/4 of the entire wealth of the world. You think we got a problem with wealth now? Those guys, 1/4 of all of the money in the world. The Morgans, the Rockefellers, the Warburgs, the Rothschilds, all in one room. Yeah, but when do they start sacrificing chickens? Well, it doesn't happen. That I'll tell you. These guys were all competitors. According to G. Edward Griffin, who we'll talk to in a minute, they all had come together to form a banking cartel so they didn't have to compete against each other. He says it was like an oil cartel or a sugar cartel, but this cartel actually went into partnership with the government. I mean, how great is that, huh? It's kind of like the drug cartels in Mexico. Wait, I didn't say that out loud, did I? So for more than a week, these men sat around there. And they sat around this big table and they hammered out all the details of what became the Federal Reserve System with 5 objectives. How many of these do you agree with? 1, to stop the growing competition from the nation's newer banks. That doesn't sound good. 2, to obtain a franchise to create money out of nothing for the purpose of lending. That one really doesn't sound good either. 3, to get control of the reserves of all of the banks so the reckless ones wouldn't be exposed to currency drains or bank runs. Oh, that's the charity part. Golly gee, beef, thank you so much. Then, to shift the losses from the bank owners to the taxpayers. It just gets better and better for you and me, doesn't it? No. Again, the answer is no.
So we're at the end of the hour. We're going to start leaving each platform. I want you to come over to the paid portion of the broadcast. And remember, we played the Beck clip because it's really a clip that is inspired by what? It's inspired by G. Edward Griffin. And it just shows you the basics of how corrupt the Federal Reserve System is in the first place, and how that it is fiat and unsustainable and one of collusion and corruption. So on the flip of this, we're going to have some G. Edward, not with Glenn Beck. Don't worry, we're not going to have that interview. We got a couple of those. We're also going to have Andy Jacobson talk about Operation Paperclip and the Upside Down. So let's start going one at a time. Twitter, goodbye. YouTube, thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. Same thing with the Rumble stuff. Let's share this with other people. Share the information. Let them know what's going on. Let them know about